Alright everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ouroboros and today I just came up with a idea for what if. What if Izuku Midoriya or Deku and Naruto were Kaguya's children? And the ship will not be each other for Deku and Naruto will not be shipped with each other for the reason um, as you might be wondering, why did I say that? Because Naruto will be a female. As our story basically begins. Oh, by the way, they will both be full Otsutsuki, as they will look human until Kaguya. Basically, um, until so. Basically, I'm going to say it later. As anywho, Hagoromo and Hamura would, about 1 year before she would, about 1 year before, where Kaguya would battle against, Hagoromo and Hamura, she would begin thinking of of having a child, as she would, a third child, as she would want this child to be 100% Otsutsuki, so so she would actually, they would actually not betray her, and she would have no reason to be angry or hate them. As Kaguya would basically, he be thinking of a way to create a child for her without, because she didn't have the time nor the patience to mate with a male, and she would gain the idea of impregnating herself, as she would create a type of jutsu which would allow her to do such. As she would give birth to two children. She would be pregnant, but not with one child, with two. She would then figure this out, as she would be ecstatic. She would have two replacements for those ungrateful half-breeds. For those ungrateful disgrace aces that are half-breeds. As she would basically be excited and prepared to have these two children, as when she was giving birth, Hagoromo and Hamura would basically take advantage of this moment, as she was significantly weak while giving birth. As they would seal her away. However, after they sealed her away, they would find two powerful chakra signatures, as one was one of the chakra signatures was about 10 times stronger than Kaguya's, as the other was about 11 times stronger than Kaguya's. Basically, without any type of fruit or absorbing chakra, that's how strong these two signatures would be. As they would be significantly stronger if they trained, as Hagoromo and Hamura would believe that they would need to split the two chakra signatures away, as Hagoromo and Hamura would create a interdimensional portal, a fracture in space and time. as they would basically send one of the children in an empty pocket of space and time, which would be, well, basically, they would create a fixed point in existence, known as the My Hero Academia universe, as they would send the as they would send one of the two chakra signatures there, as they would send the other, well, they would keep the other in the Naruto universe. However, they would, however, the two would basically not know that one day that chakra signature would basically find itself a host to give birth to it, as Hagoromo and Hamura would begin to okay. I've just been informed that this will be a one shot. What if so? It might be a bit long. Okay, as basically Kaguya would, well, sorry, um, basically the signature in the Naruto universe would be a female's, as the other would be a male's. As we skip about a couple thousands of years later, as the chakra signatures would eventually begin to settle down, as Kaguya would, as Naruto's would basically find Kushina, as Naruto's chakra would go to Kushina, who was not pregnant at all, as the same thing would happen to Inko, who, well, was not pregnant at all, and the two had never even met Guy, and had never even had relationships with guys, as they would have sort of more lesbian relationships with women. As basically, when Naruto, or Narumi was born, she would look like this, except with small, basically like a small little baby girl version of this, as she would be the first candidate for the Nine Tails, as Kaguya would basically try to stop this, as, well, Obito was trying to basically the Nine Tails destroy everything. Well, Obito basically was trying to enact his plan. Black Zetsu basically being like a elder brother to Narumi, and Izuku would, well, would basically go to no, scratch that. Izuku will not be sent to the My Hero Academia universe, as instead Inko will be in the Naruto universe, as Inko will be a Leaf Ninja, actually close good friends with Kushina, as actually they are girlfriends, basically wives. As the two would get pregnant and confused, as they would, as basically Izuku and Narumi would be born. And the two women would be confused, as basically Nine Tails attack would happen. However, Inko, kind of being like a female version of the fourth Hokage, would basically put an end to this. As before, as basically she would, before Obito could do anything, she would throw, she would basically use lightning speed, grab him by the head, and throw him into the ground, and throw him into a wall. As she would then basically rip off his mask, seeing that it is Obito, as this version of Inko would have basically have taken the place of freaking Minato. Except anything that has to do with him being a male, as she would basically have Minato's skills times 10 and his intelligence times 10. As Obito would be defeated, quite simply. And as Obito would basically have to run away. As the Nine Tails would be freed, but, well, a third Hokage would seal 5% into Kushina, as, well, should seal 1%, which was bad, into Kushina, a 1%, a 1% Inko, and then 48%. That's 49% to the other two. As Narumi, like in canon, would get the bad one, as Suzuku would get the good one. Of course. As basically, Hagoromo and Hamura would watch from above as they would see troubles were beginning to form. As they could then see the disasters and consequences of a Otsutsuki child and of their two younger siblings basically being raised together, as they could also be a strong combo team of ninja, as they could also pull what they did to their mother onto them, except basically times that by 10, as Hagoromo and Hamura would fear their siblings. Hold that thought. As basically, they would grab Izuku and create a portal which would lead him to basically, they would grab Inko and Izuku as they would throw them in a portal, basically. Or open a portal right underneath them both. As Kushina would be absolutely terrified for her wife and basically her other child, Hyld. As Narumi would not forget this, as she would then basically have sort of printed the images into her brain of Hagoromo and Hamura, as she would want to end them, or at least torture them till they gave her back her little brother, and her brother. As, anywho, now, Narumi would be, basically, at the age of 4, she would go to the academy, as she would basically walk in, as Danzo would be caught by Inko before he would before or he would enlist Itachi to kill the other Uchiha, as basically Danzo would be killed by um, by Inko before he could even have the chance to kill more than two Uchihas, as Inko would basically execute him publicly, as that would be about 10 months before they would have the kids. As anywho, so Sasuke is not all edgelord Uchiha that he is in canon, as Sasuke would be kind of very friendly, as well. In this, he would not be Indra's reincarnation, as Indra and Ashura would not even choose to reincarnate, as they would not reincarnate, as when they would basically sense Izuku and Narumi's chakra signatures just by being on the planet, they would not want to exist, as this would be basically they're doomed instantly if the people they incarnated as accidentally messed with them wrongly. They felt, as basically they would not reincarnate. So Sasuke would not be the reincarnation of Indra, as well. Yeah, he would not be all that smart. He would not be a prodigy, and he would not be a edgelord either. As Sasuke would just want to train and become stronger, as he would admire his brother, as basically he would say, uh, uh, hello, as he would nervously say hello to Narumi, and she would say hello, as all the other, I believe, 4-year-old girls would just look at Narumi with dead, with just like dead serious eyes, as they would look at her with their fingers going across her neck, just like basically a warning that she's gonna die. As well, they would basically they would all. Narumi would introduce herself as Narumi Uzumaki, the daughter of Kushina Uzumaki, and sister of Naruto of Izuku Midoriya. As Midoriya would be basically, instead of Makaze clan, it would be the Midoriya clan. Or no. Yeah. As anyways, he would. No, she would say, hey, that she was the sister of Izuku Namikaze, as they would say, you have a brother, as she would say, he was taken away from me at a young age, and so is my other mother. As she would explain that one of her moms, and that one of her parents was Kushina, as her other parent, who she had never really met, was Inko. As they would say, "You're the fourth Hokage's daughter?" And she would say something like that, as instead of having her normal yellowish hair, she would still look like this, but her hair would be like a mix between red and green, as the same thing would go for Nar Izuku over here, mostly green and only tiny, tiny streaks of red. As for her, mostly red and only tiny, tiny streaks of green. Or like a lime. Basically, as we go to the we go back. We go to the My Hero Academia universe where the two just teleported into. Basically, as, well, Inko would, basically, she would find out about quirks and all that, as she would just have to play off chakra as a quirk. And, well, try not to cause attention, get attention to herself, as she would basically raise Izuku, who of course she would name Izuku Namikaze, because her name would be Namikaze, and her last name would be Namikaze. As, well, when Izuku reached the age of 4, or he had no, quote-unquote, he had no quirk, basically. As everyone would begin to laugh at him and call him a freak and a loser and a quirkless, useless deku, as this would of course become his nickname. As Izuku would basically one day come home and say, he would say, Izuku would one day basically just be sitting alone in class, as he would be looking at the moon, which this moon was kind of a, how do I explain? This one moon is the same exact moon for all of the realities, as Kaguya's chakra would be piercing through the two realities. Thus basically creating a sort of rip to where she would also be in the My Hero Academia universe and the Naruto universe at the same time. And she would still be in the moon. As Izuku would just stare up at the moon when he was, well, he'd basically just be sitting by the window in true anime protagonist fashion, as he would just be staring at the moon outside on the window. As we go to the Naruto universe where, well, Narumi would be 8, pretty much out of the academy, as she would be a Genin, basically. And he would be on the Land of Waves mission, as she would be staring at the moon while she walked. As Izuku and Narumi could feel at the exact same moment that something was missing from their lives. And as Izuku would then think, it's not just a quirk. As Narumi would already know, she's missing her brother. But something more than that. As Izuku, he wouldn't even know about Narumi, as he would think, but something more, as more than just a quirk or something like that. As the two would look at the moon just basically with relaxation. Basically, looking at the moon would relax them. As we go to the Naruto universe, where, well, time would be distorted kind of throughout the realities, as, well, when Narumi was 8, Izuku would be, hold on, as Izuku would be 14, as they would kind of look the same age as the other. As basically while Izuku was supposedly 14, time would be faster than in his original universe, the Naruto universe. As basically he would be 14, while his sister would be 8, which his true age, of course, was 8. As, anyways, basically, Bakugo would do his whole speech about no one being better than him, and Izuku would want to be a hero like in canon, and would not want to be a hero like in canon. So, that's one change. As we go back to the Naruto universe, where Narumi would basically be walking with the others as they would see the Demon Brothers as they would defeat them. Narumi would defeat them using wood release. Because yes, she is wood release. Kage has wood release as we have seen it before, or while she was doing the Infinite Tsukiyomi, as so she will have wood release. As Narumi would use and would accidentally activate wood release as she would squeeze and she would basically be holding the two captive. As while Izuku was, as while Narumi was unlocking wood release, Izuku would unlock bone release when he was basically being bullied by Bakugo. And basically, when he was being bullied by Bakugo. And being called a quirkless deku, as basically, Deku would basically, a bone of his would sprout out of his own palm as he would cut Bakugo, severely hurting him. As Izuku would basically be confused and excited at the same time, while Bakugo would be confused and scared and angry at the same time, as he would think, "You, Deku! You hate the fact that you had a quirk from me! You dare lie!" As Izuku would then say, "But I really don't have a quirk. See?" As he would show the papers and files. As when Izuku would get home, he would tell his mother what would happen as his mother would just basically spit out the tea she was drinking, as she would then say, Are you, are you serious? You have bone release? Which I believe that's what it's called. As she would say, What's bone release? As then Inko would think it is time. As she would explain to Izuku how they were not from this world, and how they were not even from this universe. As she would then say, Hey, where they were from, there was ninjas, where everyone was quote unquote quirkless, but still had power called chakra. As she would say, you have chakra, while these other kids have quirks. That's why you are called quirkless. As is, she would then say you also have another mother and a sister. As Inko would explain how she's a lesbian. As Izuku would think, I have two moms and one sister. I have not met my other mom or my sister yet. As basically, Izuku would be excited and happy. As he would basically one day be walking with his mom to the store, as they would run into Eri, who would be running from Overhaul, as her quirk would accidentally activate. And her quirk would seamlessly activate, as she would basically use the rewinding quirk on Izuku and, well, Inko, as this would sort of just rewind them back to where they came from, as a portal would open up and suck them both in, as Overhaul would basically just catch up with her, as he would then basically just take her back with him, as Izuku would be sort of thrown just right at the Leaf Village, as he would say, ow, as he would just say, ow. As Izuku would ask his mom, where are we? As his mom would then say, home. This is Leaf Village, where you originally came from. As Kaguya, who is kind of asleep, would basically wake up, as her link to the My Academia universe would be severed, as she would wonder, why did her son die? As she would see not her son and was brought back to the Naruto universe, as she was excited. While basically Narumi would be out playing with other kids, and Narumi would basically be out playing with other kids. Narumi would be out getting scolded and yelled at, as Kushina would basically be protecting her daughter, as he would just want a fruit. As Izuku, of course, would sort of de-age into the age of 8 years old, or his true age. as Izuku would then ask his mother, um, can you bring me to my other mother and my sister? Or do you know where they live? As she would then say they're right over there, as she would point to Kushina and, well, Narumi. As Inko would basically just pop right behind, would basically just flying Raijin silently and quietly behind Kushina, as she would just tackle her from behind. As Kushina would at first be terrified, turn around, preparing to basically kill this person, as she would see Inko. As she would say, where have you been? How are you back here? We thought you were dead. As she would say, I'm not the only one who's back here. And who's back, as she would basically point over to Izuku, who Narumi would basically see that her other mom is back, as she would basically run towards Izuku. As Izuku would basically just be standing around looking at the buildings and everything, as he would be tackled by a girl who looked exactly like his age and kind of like him with the opposite hair color. As she would say, hey, you're finally here. You're actually here. You're back. How'd you get back? As Izuku would say, me and Mom were walking around as we were teleported by this little girl on accident. As they would explain the My Hero Academia universe, as Kushina and Narumi would both be absolutely confused. As Izuku, learning about his original universe, would be confused. As then Kakashi would be basically just whistling and walking by, as he going to buy a book, as he would see Izuku and Inko, as he would say, as he would basically do a sort of telepathy jutsu to do a sort of telepathy or talking through minds thing, as he would go to all the other Ombu, as he would say, hey, Inko is back, I repeat. And he would say, Lord Fourth is back, I repeat, the fourth Hokage is back. As then basically a couple of Ombu would appear here right next to Inko, as then Kakashi, of course, would be wearing, I believe, a dog mask, as he would take off his mask and say, Sensei, you're back. We thought you were dead. We thought you were never going to return. What happened? As she would explain that what happened, and they were brought to the My Hero Academia universe, as she would then explain quirks and all that. As Kakashi would just be confused and say, why wasn't I taken with you? I could have copied all of their attacks and abilities. As he just basically thought of this as a perfect idea, as he could not do it. As Inko would begin chuckling, as she would say, "This is my son Izuku." As she would then go to Kushina and say, "Izuku has bone release," as they would, as then the two would then basically stop, and basically as the entire town, the whole of Konoha would stop, as then Kushina would say, "Are you serious?" And she would, as basically she would say, "Yes, does Narumi have bone release or any type of Kekigenkai?" And then she would say, "She has wood release." And as Kushina would then say, "She has wood release." And she was like, "Oh, my baby's got a strong Kekigenkai. Yes, yes." And she'd be excited and happy. As well, basically, the third Hokage who survived the sealing would not use the Reaper's Death Seal, as he would use just the, I believe it's called 8 tetragrams, as he would be over to, as he would be with, as he'd basically be in the Hokage office or tower, as he'd just be, sitting there doing paperwork, as Kakashi would run through and say, "Lord Fourth, Lord Third, Lord Third," as Hiruzen would say, "What?" As they would say, "Hey, the fourth Hokage's returned! The fourth Hokage's back!" As Hiruzen would basically just phase out of his chair, as he would disappear out of his chair, as he would just teleport or glitch right next to Inko, as he would say, "So, Kakashi told the truth. You are back." As no one would question what Hiruzen just did. As Hiruzen would explain all that happened while she was gone, as he would also explain how Narumi would be given glares and yelled at and called a beast and a monster. As basically the fourth Hokage would the third Hokage would ask basically every villager to go to the largest public area they have, as Inko would basically appear out to the crowd, as everyone would think, "It's the fourth Hokage, it's Lord Fourth," as they would then think, "She's gonna beat the demon, she's gonna kill the demon," as they were thinking Narumi's about to die. And she would then say, First off, yes, I am back. Second off, I've been in a place full with unknown and confusing things." I should then say, "Finally, you basically have all disrespected my child and one of my two children," as she would then call Narumi, as Kushina would be eaten right beside her, as they would think, "Oh crap, the demon is the fourth Hokage's daughter, we're about to die." As Inko would basically create a couple of laws saying, don't bully her, don't call her a demon, don't be afraid of her, all these types of laws and rules, basically making it illegal to be cruel or mean, or even think of her as a demon. As things were going good, as eventually, well, Kushina and Inko would have a third child, as Inko would use a sort of gender bending jutsu to, well, give to basically have cha another child, as Inko and Kushina would spend all their time focusing about this one child, as eventually the laws would be forgotten. As Narumi and Izuku would be bullied severely. Well, Narumi would be bullied severely, as Izuku would always step up for her, as Danzo, intrigued about who this person was, would basically ask Kakashi and the third Hokage, and would basically ask the third Hokage, who is the green-haired boy? Who's the green and red-haired boy? As Hiruzen would say, that is Izuku Namikaze, the fourth Hokage's son, as basically Danzo would then think, well then, as basically inside Izuku's mindscape, the Nine Tails, even being the good side, hasn't interfered with his chakra or none. It's just awaiting for him to arrive, which it's thinking, I'm just gonna be here alone until he dies, aren't I? As then Danzo would spread rumors how, and would then tell everyone that Izuku was the demon's brother. As he would then say, he's also a nine-tailed demon. He's also a demon, as basically the abuse would center on the two of them, but whenever Kushina or the fourth Hokage were around, they would stop bullying, as basically these two would be driven around points of madness, as they'd eventually be neglected, as their two parents would focus on their younger sibling. As basically Inko would fully even forget that she even had two other children, as so would Kushina, as they would become so absorbed by the third child, giving all the attention to it, as they would basically throw Narumi and Izuku out of the household. As this would be around the time they are 9. As they would basically go to the Izuku and his sister would get one idea: escape. As in Narumi's mindscape, the bad side of Kurama, I'm the bad 49%, would not mess with her at all. As, well, basically, the bad side would sense the ungodly amount of chakra coming from her. As Izuku would be the slightly stronger one out of the two, as she would be a bit weaker but still very strong. As Izuku and his sister would be bullied so severely one day that, well, they would be left there to die, as their parents, neglecting them and forgetting all about them, wouldn't care, as the two would be left to rot unconsciously in a alleyway, as of course before they could even begin to die, Black Zetsu would find them both unconscious and badly battered, as his mother would basically I'ma go to when Izuku would first return, as everyone would. I mean, as basically, she would. I mean, Kaguya would wake up, as I said, but she would then go basically over to Zetsu and say, "Here, baby, your your brother's here. Your brother's here. Your brother and sister are here. Your brother and sister are here." And she would explain when they are, basically to protect them and watch over them. As Black Zetsu would just get to the Leaf Village, as he would be basically be there to protect them and watch over them. As well, they would see the full. He would see the two unconsciously just as he arrived. As he would take them to the Akatsuki base, as he would explain that they were two very strong people, as they would ask, do they have any Kekagenkai or Dojutsu, as basically Kaguya would be as he would basically be asking Kaguya for help, as Kaguya would say that yes, they have Dojutsu, they have Kekagenkai, as one of them has wood release, as the other would have something called bone release. As she would say, as he would then say these two, the names of these two releases, as they would think, then they're very strong. As he would then say, they also have evidence of dojutsus forming, but not acquired, not quite yet. As anywho, in Izuku and Narumi's mindscape, they would basically be in a joined mindscape, as they would both see this blue-haired, pale-skinned woman with horns and pale eyes. As she would basically say, as they would basically walk over to her, sort of getting a friendly, happy vibe of chakra from her. As they would run over to, as they would walk over to her, as she would say, "I've been waiting to meet you two for a very, very long time." Then she would say, "I am Kaguya Atsutsuki, or your true, actual birth mother." As they would then think, no, our mothers are Kushina, Uzumaki, and, well, our, and our mothers are Kushina, Uzumaki, and Inko Namikaze. As Kaguya would then explain basically what happened with Hagoromo and Hamura, as the two would have a enraged freak out. As basically, she would then as they would then say, "Why did those two ungrateful jerks seal you away? Why'd they have to seal you away? Hey, and split us apart? Why?" And she would then say they were part human. They're half-breeds. As the human side of them would basically corrupt their divine Otsutsuki DNA, as they would basically only want power and fame, as they would be greedy and fear me. As she would then explain, well, the god tree and all that, as Izuku and Narumi would not be disgusted by turning when she said she He was basically turning people into, I believe it's chakra pills or chakra fruit. I think it's chakra fruit. As they would basically not be disgusted by this, as they would think it was actually a good idea. As she would then say, Hagoromo and Hamura took all of my chakra away and gave it to these humans. As the two siblings would then say, well, where are you, mother? We can and free you and help you with your goal. As she would then say, she is sealed in the moon. She would then explain Black Zetsu, and Black Zetsu would get getting them uh, in the mindscape. She would also begin to train them, as she would then explain that they each have so much more than just wood release and bone release. And she would explain that they each had dojutsus, as she would basically tell them to, as she would basically put her hands on their faces, basically put two of her fingers each on their eyes, as their eyes would begin to sort of transform into what they truly were, Byakugans. As their hair would become silky and blue, as they would, well, their hair would not become silky and blue, but it would become longer, and they would each get Byakugans, as their skin would become a couple of shades paler, whiter basically, as she would basically begin training them, as she would train them in wood release, bone release, I believe she has uh, she can sense chakra, she can float, she would teach them summoning and all types of jutsus, as she would teach them, what's it called? Yes, basically, she would teach them all of her abilities. Well, the abilities that she would have without eating the chakra fruit, basically. As they would look a bit less emotional and more emotionless. As when they would awaken, Black Zetsu would be basically standing right over them. As they would have changed a lot. I mean, like, a lot, a lot. As he would say that mother had two gifts for you. As we go back to the past, as when Kaguya would first have a chakra fruit, and when Kaguya would first find the chakra fruit, she would see that there was 3 in total, as she would eat one whole and think of giving the other to the Hagoromo and Hamura, as she would think, no, their human DNA would basically have them overthrow me. They would be too greedy and want my power and fame, as they would think of themselves as gods and all high and mighty like that. As she would then basically find out she was having two children, as before she'd be sealed, she was thinking of giving them the two chakra fruit. As now, as we go to now, where basically, um, yeah, Zetsu would bring out the two chakra fruit, as they'd be the same size as each, as they'd be big chakra fruit. As basically, the two would begin to eat as they were starving. As Izuku's kind, gentle, happy expression would begin to fade, as his skin would begin to become pale, as his hair would begin to actually change into its original state, as a third eye would open. The same would happen to Narumi, as the two would then begin to change completely, as Narumi would look somewhat like this now. As you can see, she would look somewhat like this. As now, as she would have a third eye on her forehead. As Izuku would have a third eye on his forehead as well, as he would have basically two bunny rabbit horns similar to his sister's, and he would have two horns similar to his mother's. As his sister would have her tiny little horns, as you see right here. As basically, the two would begin training. As before that, let me show you their dojutsu. As Izuku's dojutsu would be this, and his third eye would be this, or as I'm calling it, the Tensei Rene Sharingan. As you can see in the back, a flower-like pattern, like the Tenseigan, as it also has the pattern of the Rene Sharingan, unlike Kaguya. As well, his sister, how on the other hand, would have this, as it would be called the Solarigon, and the Solarigon, or basically, no, let me as her eye would be called the Eye of Insanity, or the Kyoki no Me. As basically, the Eye of Insanity allows the user of it to basically be extremely smart to the point of omnipotence, as it would then allow the user increased speeds and strength, as it would also basically grant the user an extremely strong form of necromancy. As the other eye would give you access to, well, a chakra cloak that would look like this. As Izuku's basically, his eye would allow him to go into a Sage mode that appeared to have, well, not these eyes. Replace those eyes with the ones he has. This eye, basically, as he can also summon a sort of tailed beast of his, as this is known as the 11-tailed panther. As the 11-tailed panther is the strongest beast as there is. As with it, he can destroy entire cities and maybe even worlds. As Izuku would basically be one of the strongest and most OP Otsutsuki to exist. As anywho, when they would awaken and see their eyes, Black Zetsu would then tell the two of his mission and basically they plan, as they would accept. As we do as basically they would go to, well, they would go to the tuning exams, as basically they would begin to fight off against, and basically Gaara would be there in his, angry form. As Gaara would turn into his giant fat raccoon form. Hold that one thought. As anyways, the two siblings would begin to fight against Gaara in his Shukaku form. As the whole thing would happen with the attack, as Orochimaru would kill the fourth and third Hokage, and would kill the third Hokage, as Inko would begin fighting off against him. However, I'm gonna be fully honest, the fourth Hokage, which right now is Inko, ain't got nothing on the Sannin. As Orochimaru would kill Inko as well, expecting some sort of rage or nine-tailed reaction from the two, as they would just giggle and laugh a bit. As they would then say, "That's One Piece down. That's literally now 99%. As Inko would have the good part of would have a good 1% of the Nine Tails, as Izuku would now have a full 50%. As Kurama would, as basically his part of Kurama would be completely full, as Kushina would die from Shikaku. As then basically they would each have 50% of the Nine Tails. As they would then basically go to Gaara in his Shikaku mode, which, yes, this is full Shikaku, as basically they would have basically beat up Gaara to the point where, beat up the Shikaku mode Gaara to the point where he turned back into Gaara, as they would take the unconscious Gaara with them and take the Nine Tails. I'm going to take the One Tails out of him, as they would go to the Akatsuki base. As they would begin to extract the One Tails out of him, as everyone would begin, going after the Kazekage. I'm going after Gaara. Basically because he is a very valuable warrior of the sand. As they, when they got there, they would instantly rip the thing out of him as they would begin going. In a span of 2 weeks, they would have they would have 8 of the tail beasts, including the 9 tails. As the only one they would be missing, of course, would be Killer Bees, or the 8 tails. As Killer Bee and his brother I believe, would be basically, they would be, I mean, Killer Bee would be fully protected by as many grid warriors as they would find. However, Killer Bee would eventually be found by just Izuku alone, as Izuku would create and would basically use wood release because they both had this same types of Kekigenkai except for the dojutsus, as he would then basically knock out Killer Bee just in one hit in his chakra mode. Because may I just explain, this thing, if at its full power, can go into you know how Naruto had the 9-tailed giant Ashura Biju mode. Basically, he can do that, except this color with 11-tailed panther. As that is what is called his perfect 11-tailed panther mode. As he would basically be in an imperfect stage, as he would look like the 11-tailed panther itself. Which, let me just get a screen. As Izuku would look like this, except, well, with this color scheme. As he would begin ripping and tearing through anyone in his path. As he was far stronger than basically one there. As Izuku and his sister Narumi would begin attacking in basically everything. As the 8-tails Jinchuriki, Killer Bee, and Gyuki could not fight against the 11-tails, as they would be defeated, knocked out, as they would take Killer Bee with them, as A would be enraged and furious, as he would then say, "The 9-tailed beasts have been taken, and who knows what they're planning to do." As they would they would kill, they would extract the 8-tails out of Killer Bee, as they would begin they would begin a sort of as they would begin to sort of toss the 8-tails to the ghetto statue. As the 11-tail, as basically the ghetto statue would begin to scream and screech. As well, it would then transform from its weird, creepy statue form into the 10-tails. Which, of course, Obito would become the Jinchuriki of, as he would then be betrayed. Aid as Madara would become the, well, basically Jinchuriki of the Tentanos, as he would become Ju Juadara. Is it Judara or Jadara? Anyways, basically, yeah, I think it's Judara. Anyways, basically, he would be fighting and thinking he's winning, as he would basically be killed as a vessel. I think Kaguya's spirit would, I mean, basically, he would grow long hair, as he basically, his body would nearly almost explode, as he would then shapeshift into Kaguya, as he would be completely dead. And Madara would be basically dead, as Kaguya would be free and unsealed, as she would begin absorbing the chakra from the earth, basically. As they would begin draining the chakra from every human being and turning it into a basically giant fruit, a giant chakra fruit. As Kaguya would split into thirds, as she would eat 1/3 and give the other two to her two children, who she actually cared for and loved, because they were not part human, they were full-blooded Atsuki, as they were basically gods. As Narumi and Izuku would basically, he began to sort of rule this world, as then Izuku would basically ask his mother one thing: if they could go to the My Hero Academia world and get some revenge. So they'd say, okay. As then basically the three would enter the My Hero Academia world with an entire armada of Atsuki following them. As, let's go to Bakugo's perspective. Bakugo would be at UA, because it had been a couple of months, basically. Well, basically it'd be like 2 years. As Bakugo would be at UA as a hero, but not a pro. As Bakugo would see three people leading a ginormous armada, as he would not notice anyone except, well, he would, of course, recognize one of them, as he would then say, "Who are you, villains?" As he and his classmates and all the pro heroes would be prepared to fight. As Baku would then say, as Deku would then say, "Oh, it's a villain now." Last I thought you'd say useless Deku. As Bakugo would just, oh, his eyes would just widen insanely, as he would just say, Deku. As he'd be basically like, how did your hair change? How'd your skin change? How'd you get a third eye and horns? And who are these two people who might have an entire armada behind you? As he would say, because one, I'm not human. Two, I was never human. Three, this is my family, my mother and my sister. As when he said mother, Kaguya would just basically, he just glare at Bakugo and say, so you're the one who has bullied my precious, precious baby boy. As she would be fully prepared to just, I believe it's killing Ashbone him right then and there. As when he then said sister, Narumi would float down, and she would say, now, I'm guessing the angry Pomeranian is the one you told us about, right? As Izuku would then just nod like, yup. As Izuku would, as Narumi would then crack her knuckles, as her third eye, or the Kyoko no Me would open. The Kyoki no Me would open. As it would then begin spinning fastly and violently, as she would begin summoning giant structures of, well, she'd basically be creating a giant bone Susanoo around herself. Yeah, that's right. A perfect bone Susanoo. Meaning like a Susanoo made of bones and not chakra. Which, well, she would then basically raise the arm as she would be prepared to kill Bakugo. As Zuko would say, no, 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 I got this. As he'd then say, what do you mean you got this, you stupid Deku? You're quirkless weakling. That's all you'll ever be. As then, Izuku would then just laugh and say, weakling? Quirkless? You might be right about the quirkless part, but the weakling part is completely wrong. I am a god, he would say. I am one of the most powerful beings, a prince of gods. As my mother is a queen, as my sister is a princess. As he then said, and I have a couple new abilities which I have learned over the couple of years I've been gone. As he would then say, which of course includes, oh, I don't know, a little thing I like to call the 11 Tails, which he would go into his perfect Jinchuriki mode, which, let me just pull out a picture, as Izuku would transform into something like this. Yes. As he would basically be prepared to annihilate Bakugo. As All Might would try punching him, and so would, and basically all the heroes at once would be trying to attack him, as Izuku would just then and state the Rene Sharingan would then turn into his Rene Tensei Sharingan, as he would then basically state as he would then basically say, cataclysm, cataclysm. Anyways, he would then basically say, 11 Tails Ginger, perfect 11 Tails Gingeriki style. The cataclysmic, the cataclysmic, called again. Cataclysmic collision as basically 11 giant 11 giant tails would form out of buildings, cars, and things out. Basically anything near that was not human or animal or living, basically. That means plants as well. As these 11 tails would begin to swipe and destroy everything around them. As these 11 tails are about each the size of a skyscraper. As they would basically be coming out of the ground. Round, but all colliding from basically where Izuku was. As they, in the middle of the 11 tails, which they would kind of create like an arena or dome. There, Izuku would have at least powered down into this form. As Bakugo would be basically in the arena-like circle with him, as he would say, die, damn nerd. As Izuku would basically just Ultra Instinct dodge. As you'd say, is that really the best all the almighty Bakugo Katsuki has to offer? I'm ashamed to even fight such a weakling. As Bakugo would keep on swiping and keep exploding and keep fighting, as nothing, as Izuku wasn't even trying to fight, he'd just be dodging. As Izuku would then say, ugh, enough. 11 tails, perfect 11 tails Jinchuriki style. Yes. Purifying slash, as he would then basically create a sort of sword made out of blue and white, out of dark blue and sort of white energy, like this, as it would have yellow markings and red and the symbols of a Rene Sharingan on it, as basically the blade would lengthen about to the size of 11 feet, as he would then swipe it down directly at Bakugo, as there was no dodging this attack. Bakugo was stuck together by chains that came from the ground, or basically like 11 tiny tail-like chains, which came from Izuku, who's back, as he would then say, I have been waiting for this for a long, long time. Now, goodbye, Katsuki. As he would slash at Bakugo, just as Bakugo thought he was about to die, All Might would appear out of nowhere, taking the hit for him. As basically Bakugo would then say, All Might! No. As in this, Bakugo would have All for One, as he would be the successor, as he would have mellowed out a bit, as he would say, damn you, straight to hell. As Zuko would say, For one, I'm immortal, I won't die. And for two, you are about to die. As he would then say, as he would then basically say, Rene, Rene Tensei a Sharingan. Tensei Rene Sharingan. On. Yes. 11-tailed, the 11-bladed Rasen Shuriken. As he would summon a 11-bladed Shuriken, which was basically like a Rasen Shuriken with 11 blades. It would be glowing a sort of blue, fiery essence. Blue, white, and dark blue, kind of almost black, red, and yellow. As he would then say, goodbye, Katsuki. As he would then basically shove of this right at Bakugo's chest, as Bakugo would explode. As for All Might would basically be turning into chakra. As well, that chakra would then be going to Izuku. As Izuku would then say, now that there's no more hero interference, let's get rid of the other interference as well. As he would then say, that means the hero, that means the villains. As basically All For One would walk out of nowhere and try to and would basically jump out of nowhere trying to attack Izuku. As Izuku's 11 tails, the giant ones, would all collide at All For One. As he would say, well, that should be all the resistance dealt with. As just as he said that, the 11 tails would begin to crack and break, as All For One would be using a strength quirk. As he would then say, interesting. Very nice. You survived that. Then how about this? As he would then summon basically 1,000. Basically 11,000. 1,111. And giant iron tails made of wood from the ground. As he would say, try dodging this. As All For One could not. As he would try, but the 11 tails would basically wrap around him, squeezing him to the point where he could not escape, and, well, he could not use his quirks. As he would then say, time to die. As Izuku would chuckle a terrifying chuckle, as he would then say, no. How about I let my mother claim this world as ours? As he would then go back into his normal Otsutsuki form. As he'd then say, Mother, you may finish him off. As Kaguya would summon the all-killing Ashbone in just one shot. All For One. As without any resistance, they would begin taking the chakra from the My Hero Academia universe. As, yes, there would still be chakra in the My Hero Academia universe, but no one knows how to use it, or if it even exists. as basically all for one would be as basically everyone would be completely drained of any resistance or force or power, as Kaguya would then create another chakra fruit, as she would split it into thirds once more, as they would then rule two, not one, not two, but three worlds, including the Otsutsuki world. As the three would then basically, begin, well, remodeling the worlds into their own images. As the three would basically be an immortal, happy family, as they'd be ruling an entire empire built upon blood and death of the many innocent lives. As for Hagoromo and Hamura, do not worry. I planned something out for them as well. As these two are basically just in the afterlife. Just floating around in the afterlife. I'm just there in the afterlife. As then Kaguya would appear. Basically, a worm, a hole would open up as they would see two full-blooded Otsutsukis in Kaguya, as they then say, crap. As Narumi would grab and would basically would release to grab Hamura, as Suzuku would use, well, his 11 tails, the 11, the cataclysmic collision, as he would then basically have the 11 tails wrap around the 11 giant tails, which he just created out of pure chakra, as they would actually look like this and these types of tails, as they would then wrap around Hagoromo, as he could not move whatsoever. As then Kaguya would basically prepare to and as then, well, Kaguya would then prepare to all-killing Ashbones, and, well, instead, Izuku and his sister would then turn the two half-breeds, the two disgusting half-breeds as they would call them, into chakra fruit, as they would then eat the chakra fruit. As, well, Narumi would eat chakra fruit made from Hagoromo, made from Hamura, as Isuku would eat the chakra fruit made from Hagoromo. As the three would then basically leave the afterlife or wherever they were, as they would rule over 3 planets. As for right now, Kaguya would rule over the Otsutsuki world, as her son, of course, would rule it when he was older. As the other two would have created a sort of castle or temple in between the two realities, as they would create basically a temple in between the My Hero Academia universe and the Naruto universe, as they would rule over both as one. As they would rule kind of happily. And they basically live kind of happily and ever after, as 3 godly beings, which would, of course, begin consuming the chakra of more planets as they would begin growing god trees, eating planets, and destroying civilizations as they would grow more planets into the Otsutsuki Empire. And that is where I'm going to end this off. Hope you enjoyed this one shot. What if? This has been Ouroboros, and goodbye. So, yeah, goodbye.